here to talk about the building that we're in. My name is Jamie Erickson. I'm the town administrator for the town of Natick, this great town that you all, I'm assuming most of you live in, or at least spend time in, especially on this lovely Wednesday rainy night at 6 p.m. In the Johnson School gym space. Cafetorium? Is this a cafetorium? Gym a cafeterium is what I'm being told is the official name of this space. We'll get to that. And I'm here just to just fill you in on some of the next steps that are going to be happening with this space or with this property, and really try to at least take questions in. This is really designed as a listening session to hear from all of you to jumpstart really an engaged public process in the coming months and years ahead. Before I dive in, I'd like to just do a couple housekeeping measures. One, there are a couple ways to engage tonight. There were some 3x5 cards out front, so if you're not comfortable speaking in front of a mic or we just run out of time, please ask any questions you have on the 3x5 cards. There's also on the flyer, which they're located around the space, including on the back tables, there's a QR code. You can certainly just scan the QR code with your phone and type in any questions. It auto-populates a spreadsheet that we are actually monitoring up front here. We'll try to get to some of the questions tonight that we can answer. Some of them we're just going to catalog so that we know some of the future questions that we need to answer as an administration. But please provide any questions through those means, or we'll have the mic available. I am hoping that we can be done by 7 o'clock tonight, just to respect all of our times and try to keep this to a contained evening. Other just housekeeping measures. There are some select board members here tonight. I want to thank them for attending. We have actually, I see 3 members, I believe. We have Catherine Coughlin, who's the chair of the select board, Richard Sidney, who's the clerk of the select board, and Linda Walschlager, our newest member of the select board. One thing to note, the select board is here to also listen. This is not a posted meeting of the select board, so they cannot respond to questions. They're not here to really do more than just listen. If they were to respond to questions, they might even be in violation of open meeting law. So they're here to listen just like the rest of us on town administration. Also here tonight with me are some other members of the town team that will be part of the engagement process moving forward. John Marshall, who is the Deputy Town Administrator for Operations. You might know him through his Rec and Parks days. He's also a born and bred Natick guy. He'll also be monitoring some of the questions through the QR code. Bill Spratt, who is our Director of DPW and Facilities. He knows this building well from his facilities background. Jay Parapadich, who's our Director of Communications. Sorry, I thought I missed somebody. Nope. Travis Farley, who is our Director of Recreation and Parks, also part of our Community Services Division, and Amanda Loomis, who is our Director of Community and Economic Development. This is part of the team that you'll probably see more in the coming months and years ahead as we talk about the community engagement process for this property. And I just wanted to introduce them because they are here tonight. They're going to be taking notes, and they're going to be available just in the future to answer questions that you may have. Just to level set some of the discussion for tonight, we're talking about the Johnson property, obviously, the Johnson School. Long-standing school in this neighborhood, in this community, 75 years. I believe this year is the 75th year anniversary of the school. Beloved institution. Not from Natick originally. I've heard a lot of amazing things about it. I've actually worked with people in town hall who grew up and went to Johnson, so it is near and dear to, I know, a lot of people in the community's hearts. But it has been made, there has been a decision made by the school committee. Oh, I do believe, is Catherine Brunel in the room? Catherine Brunel from the school committee is also here tonight. I believe she might be helping still check some people in. Oh, she's here? Oh, there you are. Sorry. You blend in so nicely with the crowd. But the school committee in the 2020-2021 timeframe made a decision to basically close the school over a phased approach. That phased approach was intended to last through the years of basically the classes that were in the school, with a target date of the actually next school year of school year 2024-25. Earlier this school year in December, the school committee made a decision to actually, my understanding, based on feedback from the community, to actually close the school a year earlier. And I forgot to also mention interim superintendent Bella Wong is here tonight as well, who has been working on this in her time since she's been a superintendent for the town. That jump-started or really kick-started a process that is leading us here to today. When a school is determined to no longer be a school by the school committee, there's a process that the town must go through to basically transfer the care, custody, and ownership of the school from the school committee, because it's no longer deemed to be needed for a school purpose, to the select board as the owners of other property in town, basically all other property in town. That process culminated in a decision by the town meeting earlier this season. It actually happened last week. And so at the end of this school year, the school will be transferred from, on paper anyway, from the school committee to the select board. The intent of tonight is not to rehash the past. It's really to learn more about what's happening in the future and what will become the new Johnson site. I can assure you that as of right now, I have zero answers for you with regards to the long-term use of this property. Zero. This is going to be happening over the coming months and years ahead through a public engagement process that has yet to be designed. We're going to be working on that as town administration in the coming months. But you will have an opportunity through multiple avenues for engagement in the coming months and years ahead. I do want to just also highlight a few things that will be happening in the interim, however. Once the transfer of the property happens from the school committee to the select board, town administration needs to understand some of the short-term needs of the building and potential interim uses. A mothballed building is not a preferred experience because it's just not a preferred. It's harder sometimes to mothball a building than it is to at least keep some activity in the building. What that activity is can range. For example, it could be a simple, some office space for some back of house needs of the school or town administration. It could be a more active storage. It could still be, for example, this summer, we do intend to have the YMCA run their summer program out of this school space for the summer. The reason for that, and I just want to talk to that briefly, is the YMCA currently operates an after-school program as part of the Johnson School. They also currently run an after-school program at the former East School up on Oak Street. That program on Oak Street actually is also a summer program. They run a summer program at Oak Street. Oak Street, though, needs to get its windows replaced this summer. So we actually had already planned to relocate that summer program for the YMCA to the Johnson School site for this summer. And then they would go back to Oak Street once that project is completed. That's really the most immediate what you're going to see as actual actions on this property. That is going to give us town administration time to review the site, understand what some of the short-term needs are for the property from a maintenance perspective, from a desire perspective, from hearing from all of you tonight, and allowing us to then plan for that long-term community engagement moving forward. Some of the short-term things that I can certainly say that we have already budgeted for and planned for are things like ensuring that the outside spaces remain open to the public. So, for example, the playground spaces and the other fields, as long as they stay safe. A benefit of the current structure of Natick is that we have a lot of shared resources with the school department. So, for example, our Department of Public Works, the LF&R division, Land, Facilities, and Natural Resources, they already help to maintain the playground space in collaboration with the school department. They're going to continue to do that. Our Facilities division, as run by Bill Spratt, already do some of the work in this building on the day-to-day basis. What we need to do is figure out how does this transition when it's not an active school. That's what we're going to be doing once the school use is not in this building anymore. We have a good handle, but we need to understand, again, after the school year, what that means for the town and what that means for our operations. We're also going to be looking at just some other demand. So the town has been embarking for several years on space analysis throughout town. More on the town side, meaning the town general government side. We have a lot of spaces in town. I mentioned the East School, the former East School up on Oak Street. The town is also working with our Rec and Parks division to look at the Cole Center. We want to look at this property as part of that sort of space analysis, just to look at some of the more short-term interim needs to see if the building as it currently exists is a possibility for accommodating some of the short-term needs. What that is, I don't know yet, but that's just some of the short-term items while we plan for, and while really the community plans for the long-term desires for what happens with this property. Just going through my notes, I apologize. There have been a lot of questions on social media, posts to me, posts to probably some of you about what can happen here. The site is currently zoned RG, which is known as residential general. That is the underlying zoning, which means that and it's the surrounding neighborhood zoning as well. By and large, that's a residential type zoning district that allows single and two family zoning districts on approximately 12,000 square foot lots. Certainly. Yep, I'm trying to be as loud as I can, hopefully. I appreciate the feedback, thank you. I will try to continue to speak into the mic as best I can. Sorry about that. So I'll restart that most recent sentence. So there's been a lot of questions that I've heard or have seen on various social media platforms about what can happen to the property. And I'll just go through some basic details about the property. It's currently zoned RG, which is residential general. That is the zoning that actually is part of the surrounding neighborhood. That allows for single and two family homes primarily on about 12,000 square foot lots. In order for any zoning change to happen for this property, that would require town meeting approval. In order for any substantive development to happen on this property, whether it's compliant or there needs to be a zoning change, if it's a town-sponsored item, we would have to seek appropriation through town meeting in order for the property to be sold. If the select board says, hey, we want to sell this to XYZ developer or to XYZ nonprofit or to any use, that also requires town meeting approval. Really, most anything that happens long-term with this property will require significant community engagement, likely some type of review by many different boards and committees in town, such as the planning board or other regulatory boards, and likely some type of review and approval by town meeting, whether it's for an appropriation or for an authorization to the select board to do something, or for other reasons to be determined based on what that future use could be. So for example, if there needs to be a significant investment on the property, town meeting handles the appropriations of those types of funds through their process. Just want to clarify that for everybody because there's a lot of steps and a lot of process that will need to happen for there to be really any type of significant happenings, whether it's redevelopment, sale, change in use, or any of those purposes on this property. Another question has come up about ADA compliance. ADA compliance for the building or any future building really depends on the details of that use or that building. Though I mentioned that the YMCA is going to be activating some of the space this summer. We will work, and we've already been working very closely with the YMCA to understand what portions of the building are ADA compliant for that use. Any other use of the existing space, even in an interim step, will also go through that same rigor and need. In all likelihood, an active use would not probably use the entire building because there are very large portions of the building that are not ADA compliant. Other code requirements also come into play, whether it's for fire suppression or emergency egress and access or just emergency lighting. So all of those things come into play really with any change in use. And most anything moving forward would be considered a change in use because it's no longer a school. Sorry, just making sure I'm checking my notes real quick. So what I'd like to do now is open it up to some questions, see what the questions are in the community. I tried to cover some of the basics that I've heard from the community through various forums or people, but I want an opportunity to really hear from you. Like I mentioned earlier, I can't guarantee that we're going to have answers to the questions, but we are taking those notes and we are going to catalog those questions. I'd like to start just with maybe some of the questions that have already been posed through the QR code that we have, just to get some of the juices flowing and to get people thinking through what questions might come forward. Do you have a question, John?
So one of the questions, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. One of the questions that has come in, could the Johnson site be used for after-school programs or recreation?
So that's a great question. In brief, and I guess in short, most likely the answer is yes, subject to review by the code inspectors, such as the building inspectors, and we'd likely have to do some type of building work in order for it to make sense. And in all likelihood, it would not be the entire building. It would likely just be those portions of the building that are ADA compliant, which is a small portion of the building. So that's the short answer of the future use, at least the interim use for like an after school or a recreation type program. One thing to note from the recreation program perspective is keeping the field portions of the site open, that can happen today. Meaning, since we're not doing significant work on the playground, at least there's not contemplated significant work other than regular maintenance to make sure it stays safe, that will continue for the foreseeable future until we have a long-term strategy and plan for the property through the public engagement process that will ultimately need to work through the select board and then through town meeting, depending on what that future is. We'll just do one more quick question, then we can answer.
Another question that has come in: will the local neighborhood be a Sorry. Will the local neighborhood be a priority regarding future use?
That's a very good question. The intent of determining a future use, in my conversations with the select board, in my conversations with staff, and in my conversations with really all members of the public, is to ensure that there's significant community engagement, so that we can hear from the local neighborhood and the Natick community as a whole, but especially the local neighborhood, to make sure that we're understanding and respectful to those demands, desires, future vision through that community engagement process. Is there a question back there? I love kids at meetings. One thing, I have 3 kids of my own. They've since grown up, so when I hear a little kid, I'm always like, oh, I'm glad I'm not in that situation anymore. If you do have a question, if you can get to the mic, that'd be great, or I can hand the microphone over if you cannot get to the mic. We do have a mic. Actually, is that removable, Randy? Is that a wireless one? So maybe we can... Here. Oh, is that not on? Here, just use this one.
Yeah. Just a quick question. Can a schematic of the floor plan of the school be posted, which indicates which areas are ADA compliant and accessible? Make it easier to sort of imagine space use. That's it. Thank you.
Sure. Did everybody hear the question? Great. I'll give you a short answer, which is I don't know. I'd have to see what we have for plans. This is an older building, and in theory, we have plans of all existing buildings in town. But given the age of this building, I'd have to confirm with the building department if we still have architectural plans for the building. And a lot of that, it's hard to say exactly which portions are going to be ADA compliant, just because there could be scenarios that we'd have to have review on to ensure that we're providing accurate information. But if we can get a copy of the schematics and we can scan them and get them online, we can certainly try to do that for public information purposes. Yeah, do you mind?
Hi. Are you working in consultation with the Natick Police Department to ensure the property is remaining free from the, unlawful activity and the like?
It's a great question. So the question was really around public safety and the police department around, did everybody hear the question? Are we working in concert with the police department? And the short answer is yes. We have had, since the decision in December, town administration has been working. We've had a group together that has included police, fire, building department, and the members you hear today, recreation. But from a public safety perspective, those are really the three primary ones that we've engaged with, as well as DPW, to just start understanding the property and understanding the needs of the property. With all town properties, police do regular review and work. In this case, yes, we will have even once the. This is one of the reasons why we have to understand if we're going to mothball the site versus keep some level of activity in the site, because some level of activity in the site, it's eyes on the property on a regular basis is preferred from a public safety perspective, because there's eyes on the property on a regular basis. But yes, we do plan on having regular public safety review of the property and the police in particular. Yeah, I'm sorry, do you mind if I just ask the superintendent? She has a point. Sorry, thank you, Jeff.
I just wanted to clarify that while the school is still a school, we don't post floor plans of any of the schools while they're schools. So while there might be schematics that they find that will be available, they won't be able to post them until it's not a school anymore.
Excellent point. Thank you. We had a question there.
Has the town already received any inquiries from nonprofits or commercial entities? And if the town were to receive such inquiries, how would the public be made aware that there's interest in use of the property?
Excellent question. So the town receives inquiries from people all the time about town property. The specifics on this property, I believe a few years ago, there was some inquiries, but it wasn't to town administration. That was more to school administration at that time. Town administration has not received inquiries to date from nonprofits or otherwise regarding the property. At least not anything that is more than just what's happening with that property. Most any sale of property for the town, under Mass General Law, we have very specific requirements in how we are allowed to sell property. Generally speaking, first what would have to happen is town meeting would have to authorize the select board to sell a property. Then the select board would have to go through a disposition process, which is outlined in Mass General Law, which basically opens up to anybody who wants to bid on the property to submit their proposals. That's a very public process. So general inquiries that come in, we don't usually just catalog those more than just thank you for your information, and we'll let you know when a bid process occurs. That bid process is really that more public process that will be viewable by the public.
Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Brunel. I just want to thank everyone for coming tonight. This has been a long process, and it's amazing to have this type of just people show up at this for the building. One thing that Jamie and I talked about was that tonight, if you don't have a question and you just want to make a comment, that's okay too. So this is definitely a listening session. We'd like to hear from the community. So just wanted to say if you wanted to share something, that's fine too. Is that okay?
No, that's perfect. Excellent point. In fact, even through the QR code or through the index cards, we're actually receiving quite a few just statements or comments there. We're not going to read them tonight because that would take probably the entire rest of the evening. But please send them in. Let us know. We'd love to hear some of this initial feedback. I believe there was a question. I'll get. Yep.
I have a question and a comment. The question is, how will you keep the community informed about this process, especially once the school is closed? You said there's going to be a lot of steps and a lot of things involved. Please don't assume that we understand, how all the various boards and everything and committees in the town, how how will you keep communicating with us to keep us so that we know what those steps are and when to engage? And then my comment is, I just want to emphasize the importance of keeping the playground here for the longer term, that it's really important for the health of the surrounding neighborhood. Especially if the town wants to have dense housing in this area, you know, then having the families in this area have a playground to be able to walk to is really key for continuing to attract families to this area and having them willing to live in a denser neighborhood.
First, thank you. I appreciate the comments and the feedback on the playground space and the open space. With regards to how to stay active or engaged, with our communications director, we are setting up, if not, we have already set up a web page on the town's website that we're going to be posting information, such as a detailed account of tonight's meeting. You'll see ways to sign up for regular updates on that page as well. And there'll be a feedback loop on that page. So for example, the survey that you see tonight will have opportunities on that page for continued feedback. If you're not able to make a meeting, give feedback on that page. Even if we don't have a meeting, give us feedback on that page. Sign up for those regular updates so that when we do have meetings, we can use that email list, if you have email, to get the word out. Our intent is to really, we're very, very early in the process. I will say that. And so you might not hear from us for a little while until we can really develop that process. But we do want to make sure that we get everybody who wants to be engaged to be engaged in that process. So please go to the, do we have is it just natickma.gov? Okay, go to natickma.gov. Jay will make sure it's very apparent on the front page for the foreseeable future so that anybody here tonight, if you go there tonight or tomorrow, you'll be able to see it and then sign up. And that's where we're going to keep an information repository of all the stuff that we collect and information there from the public. I'm going to go here real quick, if that's okay. Either way is fine. Here. There you go.
Thanks. Yeah. First, a clarification question. In terms of the field and the playground, you said that as long as it's safe, is the town committed to keeping it safe?
So, excellent question. So the question is the town committed to keeping the sort of field and the playground safe? We currently do regular maintenance on the playground today. So that is intended to continue for the foreseeable future while we go through the public engagement process. So yes.
Great. And then I would just echo the need and desirability of keeping the open space. And what would be the open space committee's role in this whole long-term process?
Just to confirm, the Open Space and Recreation Committee. So for those who are not aware, there's a committee in town called the Open Space and Recreation, I believe Advisory Committee is their technical term. It's actually a committee that has various members of other boards and committees in town as well as residents. They are charged with, among other things, keeping up to date the town's open space and recreation master plan. The most recent plan, I believe, is from 2020, so they're actually due to do an update. That's on the town's website. But the question is, what is their role in this? So my hope is that really all boards and committees in town that feel they have a desire will be part of the process. I'm intimately familiar with many of the members on that committee, and so my hope is that they do provide their feedback and process, or feedback into the process. Will they have a very active role in that? That's to be determined. I think we need to first digest the property as town administration and then come up with that public engagement process that may include more targeted engagement with boards and committees in town as well.
Hi, thank you. Great information. I appreciate everything you've said so far. But we've been through this as a town before. We have Cole School, we have East School. So the town select board members may have already been part of that decision, but I'd like to know I know there's no anticipated exact date, but there's got to be some sort of anticipation of when this will be executed on. And then second question is, ultimately, the select board is the decision maker, but who's really making that decision? I know you said we'll all be having that input, but ultimately, it is the school, the select board. Is that correct?
So to answer the first question is, when is this process to start? My hope is that by the fall into the winter time, we'll have mapped out a community engagement process for the select board to review and endorse. So we have a lot of recent examples of community engagement processes, some more successful than others, that we're going to be drawing from to and put into the context of this property, knowing the passion that people have for this property in the community. And so that's what's going to help inform how we structure that community engagement process moving forward. When that process starts is to be determined. We have a very full year ahead as an administration and as a town. And I just want to be very blunt with everybody here and clear with everybody here that we're still trying to figure out how that timing actually works. The decision, given town meeting has authorized the transfer of the property from school committee to select board, while there will still be likely the need for town meeting authorization for various components of a future, such as authorization to sell the property or an appropriation of funding depending on what the end goal is or desired end result. That decision does ultimately largely rest in the hands of the select board. But obviously it's based on the community engagement and community involvement and community feedback. And there could be many other public processes that are part of that. So for example, if the community feedback is let's rezone it for an XYZ use, well, town meeting ultimately needs to make that decision on rezoning, not the select board. If the town wants to rebuild the property into another municipal building use, that will likely require some type of appropriation of funds or a vote of the voters. So it really depends on what that future is. We'll determine who ultimately makes the decision, but it does start with the select board.
Thank you.
Yeah, so therein lies part of the problem, right? Because engagement is different from actually being able to help impact a decision. And as we kind of saw with what happened to the school in the first place, right? We're kind of left with the aftermath, and our recourse is, well, I guess I'll just try to vote some people out, right? Not a great process, right? So if there's any opportunity to actually bring things to, I don't know, so I'm also relatively new to public engagement in Natick. I've been here for like 7 or 8 years, but you know, basically the school closing down was a call to action to me, like, gee, I should probably pay a little bit more attention. What I've seen so far is like not great. And I don't know if it's possible, but it'd be great if we could actually have like a vote around what happens, what gets done, some of these things. So we're not left to decision making being up to people who are often running uncontested for a lot of town meeting slots and aren't even necessarily representative of the area or people that live here are necessarily making decisions in the best interest of everyone.
You mentioned the process for if you were to sell the building. What if somebody wanted to lease it, like a nonprofit or some other organization wanted to lease it? What's the process for that?
That's a great question. So the much depends on the terms of that lease. So if it's more than 3 years, town meeting would need to authorize that lease. If it's for a short term, up to 3 years, town administration could enter into that lease more quickly. So it really depends, and a lot also depends on what that lease is for. So given the complexities of the building in its current state, there may still need to be processes such as review by the planning board or review by the building inspector or others, depending again on what that use is, to then determine what that process is for a lease. But a lease, any town-owned space can be leased for up to 3 years by the town without seeking additional authority. That's governed by Mass General Law. Anything beyond that would require town meeting authorization. The other reality is that if the town is looking to lease the space, it's a similar disposition process to a sale. We would have to put it out for some type of bid to get responses. The YMCA, I'll say, is unique because we already have them working with the town on a short-term basis and in the building as well as in other buildings, so we already have that relationship with the YMCA. And that's more of a short-term use rather than an actual like long-term lease.
Hold on one sec. I'm going to give you the microphone so you can speak into it.
All right.
And we can't answer all questions.
Yeah, no, I know. I understand. And if you don't want to answer it, that's totally your call. But the question was whether or not the town could be engaged in an actual like vote on future use and how things like, yeah, if the town could actually be engaged in a vote rather it just being decided by committee.
So I appreciate,
I don't
I
know
appreciate
if
the
that's
question. I took that as more of a, I apologize. I didn't mean to not answer the question. So that's a great question. I'd have to confirm what the town could or could not do. I have seen in other communities non-binding votes. I don't believe that there would be an ability to do like a binding vote, but I'd have to confirm that.
How many acres are involved in this property?
I'd have to confirm do you know the exact size? No. About 7.5 acres is what I'm hearing. It's
is
actually two properties technically together. Yep.
This young lady back here mentioned the word housing. Can she give us a definition of her version of housing?
I believe the question was somebody mentioned housing. So
Yes.
I'm not sure which part of my comment you're referring to. Do you mean when I referred to denser housing? Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I meant.
can we just get the mic back to you? Sorry, we're just trying to do it this is being taped by Pegasus, and we're just trying to make sure we get an accurate account.
It's okay, here.
Okay.
I have a comment or a plea, really, and I was on that school committee that made the decision to close Johnson School, so I'm going to preface my comment with that confession from the outset. But I do believe this property belongs to the community, and I do believe it belongs to the town. The playground is wonderful, and my comment is, I hope that that playground could be used in some way in perpetuity. What Natick lacks is a fully accessible playground. We don't have one, which is unbelievable. There's a foundation in California called the Magic Bridge Foundation, and they sponsor and help build playgrounds that are for differently abled children. They are for senior citizens. They are for all kinds of kids. And having a fully accessible playground that was open to the community in an area where the housing is so constricted, I think would be a wonderful dream. And I hope that there might be some will to act on that.
Thank you for the comments.
Hi, I'm also new to all of this, but just a thought going off of what you were saying to maybe spark some community involvement. Is there any way we could get, some categories of possibilities to maybe start a vote before everything happens, just so you can get a sense of what the community, what direction we might want to be going in?
Right. So, excellent question. So the question, if I can just paraphrase a little bit, is and I'll speak to the community engagement process a little bit, but could there be a series of understandings as to what is possible for the property moving forward?
Or just so you have a better idea of what is going on in the minds of the surrounding communities, where what people definitely wouldn't want, or maybe where people are geared towards types of facilities.
That's an excellent question. So just for those who don't know my background, I've actually been town administrator for 3 years now, but I spent 15 years in the community engagement world. I was a community planner for various communities, including Natick, working on community engagement processes, many of which were designed around exactly just that type of desire, meaning engage with the community to get a flavor and understanding as to what the community wants to see in a given project or property or site. Some of my background was in redesigning park spaces. Some of my background was in reactivating town buildings for new uses. And so the community engagement process is designed for just that. I can tell you that through the community engagement process, we're going to hear a lot of things, a lot of ideas. So the question is, maybe a vote is a little more concrete. I've never, yep. Understood. So the community engagement processes typically involve various preference surveys. We don't usually call them votes because a vote is. I'm just trying to explain a community engagement process because I can't speak to the specific answer is, will there be a vote? But community engagement process in general involve hearing from the community, hearing from experts, hearing from people who might be interested in working on the property or doing work on the property, whether it's internal or external, and hearing from all parties to understand what a future for the property could be. And then synthesizing that information, having regular feedback loops, and then bringing that information forward for the decision makers to ultimately move forward with a future for the property. There's a lot of process involved. There's a lot of engagement involved. There are components of votes, whether it be like a ballot vote. I've personally never seen that through that type of process. But it's the community engagement process is designed or intended to solicit that input, solicit that feedback. I think I saw. Oh, I saw a hand over there. Or Paul, there's already somebody with a mic. Okay.
Sorry, thank you. I just want to address a little bit those concerns, especially from newer residents. I've been a Natick resident now for about 29 years, 27 of the last 29 years. Part of what brought me back here after renting was the Johnson School. Part of what gave me the political awakening to run for town meeting and 2 terms on the select board initially was the threat to close this school in 2007. I know many of you in this room, and my family knows many of you in this room because of that very issue. So this is history repeating itself to a degree, but with a certain degree of finality to it. First of all, I was chair on the select board a couple of years ago when we not only decided to remove the dam in South Natick, the spillway, we also disposed of the Elliott School in South Natick. There was a lot of outreach, a lot of concern, a lot of hysteria about what's going on, what's going to be here. I want to ask 2 things of people. Number 1, take a look at that yellow sign and substitute education for community. This is a difficult process. It's an emotional process. Facebook is not an official channel. As far as I can see, it's a whipping post for hysteria. Anything you've heard, any rumors, anything so-and-so said, anything 3-generation person said that is fact is probably not entirely fact. So please, come to this process with an open mind and the spirit of collaboration. I know the current seated select board members, 4 of whom are here and 1 of whom is probably coaching a baseball game right now, care deeply about this community, this neighborhood, and the community at large. Your elected officials are your voice. A lot of you know me that I'm trying to hopefully advocate for a difference in the way we govern ourselves, because I think we can do things better and frankly take some of the burden of things that we impose on our professional staff away from them so they can make better decisions for us. These are people with master's degrees in planning. These are young family heads themselves. These are professionals that now we have in place that we did not have 20 years ago, that are focused on communicating to the community, that are focused on taking complex decisions and boiling them down to the essence of decision making for voters. I was asked at the time, why don't we put the dam to a vote? This town was asked, why don't we put changing the name of Redmen to Redhawks to a vote? You can't sometimes put things to a vote because it becomes a popularity contest that is not grounded in reality and can open a can of worms of unintended consequences. So your voices do matter, your voices are factored in, but it's up to you to engage in the process. Democracy is a contact sport. And it's very important that we give our elected officials the respect that they've earned by earning your vote and your trust. And it's extremely important that we give our professional staff, who are thinly staffed in an environment where it's very hard to find well-trained professionals, and we've got a great team in this town, to do the right things on our behalves. So I just encourage people, as you think about this, take to heart that these are human beings that are spread thin. Sometimes on a day-to-day basis, I will generalize this by saying that man and the team that he works with are confronted with silliness that distracts them from doing their day jobs. And they're trying their earnest best to do their best work for us. So please remember that when you ask questions, when you're looking for information. Jay is a local community member as well, and a professional communications person. If you're not hearing about things, we have ways to reach people now that we didn't in the past, including reaching out to your elected officials. That's why they are there. That's why they're serving you as volunteers. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight on their behalves, and I also care deeply about where this goes. So just I wanted to remind people of that, especially. Facebook is not an official channel.
No, I mean I can, but not because of the mic. we'll get, yeah. There we go.
Hi, I just wanted to share a concern that has come up so far in the process, which is that this Johnson neighborhood, this Johnson community is small compared to the rest of Natick. We're mighty, but we're small. And if there comes a point where the needs of this neighborhood come in conflict with the needs of the town, I just want the needs of this neighborhood to be taken seriously. These are our property values. This is our community. This is where we've laid our roots. And I think in the past, in the school committee vote, because we were a smaller group, our needs were not taken seriously compared to the rest of the town. So I just wanted to share that concern.
Thank you for the feedback.
All right, thank you. First of all, just thank you for hosting this event so early in the process. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak and as a community share our thoughts and voices. I guess no questions, just feedback, commentary. One maybe more short-term, another long-term. From a relatively short-term perspective, just thinking to the next 5-7 years, we know we're already taking our first steps towards another significant building project, right? We've kind of put our eggs in the basket of, sure. We're putting our eggs in the basket of our next big school at Memorial, which I understand the rationale for, and I'm not here to contest past decisions. But more so, speaking as a resident, a taxpayer, a town meeting member, a little concerned that we're going all in on a plan A without a plan B. We haven't gone through, I think, the level of detailed analysis on enrollment, et cetera, typically that would be done as part of the MSBA. So I would just hope to see that we don't make any drastic changes that we can't come back from before we get into that detailed process. Want to ensure there's flexibility when it comes time to a vote for a debt exclusion or what have you. And then secondly, just as others have mentioned, want to ensure that this community's voice really is heard. There are a lot of young families that I think are challenged with participating in these type of events. Oftentimes the participation is a little lower, but this property really has been kind of the hub of that ecosystem for this community. A lot of families don't want to see their elementary age kids crossing 135, crossing North Main or South Main Street. So hope to keep this as a hub for that ecosystem of families in this area going forward.
Thank you for those valuable comments. Thank you.
So I've got a comment, but it could be because I had my very last parent-teacher conference, 5 kids all went through Johnson. Today was our last parent-teacher conference, so I'm a little misty right now, but I just want to acknowledge the incredible staff at this school, right? Like, just it's hard to talk about a process right now, right, with just acknowledging the grace and the love that they've shown our kids. So in thinking about tonight, I just wanted to tell you, Jamie, at this school, we give out paw prints. We give out paw prints to kids just to recognize when they are being good to others, right? And this being an elementary school, I want to just leave you with a little bit of an acronym or a mnemonic device, right? Like PAW, paw, and just 3 words for you to remember. Make this process purposeful. This is a sacred space within this neighborhood, within this community. So purposefully do whatever you can to engage stakeholders. And what we've heard from you tonight, and we're meeting you with just the honesty that you're coming to us with, which is you don't have anything specific in mind for this, but you want to engage people every step of the way. 2 is the A stands for aspirational. There's been a school on this land for 142 years. It would be the most short-sighted thing to do to say, well, we're going to close a short-term budget gap through the sale of this land, right? It would be foolhardy for us not to think about what this community is going to look like. Maybe it's not 142 years from now, right? But it's long into the future. And then lastly, W is just to have a sense of wonder, right? It was so disheartening for me to overhear a current select board member say that the Johnson space is destined to be housing, right? We've got to be thinking in terms of in being from a really creative standpoint. What does the community really yearn for? Yes, affordability is going to factor into things, and yes, we're going to have to think about what the pressing needs of the entire town are. And yet, let's not foreclose any opportunities, right? Let's take this opportunity right now to really dream about what the future for this space could look like. And I promise you, I know Brenna Turner, Principal Brenna Turner, she's gonna save her paw print, pen, okay? Her paw print marker, and you're gonna get a paw print if we have a process that is purposeful, that is aspirational, and that has a sense of wonder to it. Thanks.
Thank you. John, I'm going to have a person up here. He's been waiting since the beginning, so. You can take it and I'll.
John Kaufman, 97 South Main Street. This is 99. My property abuts Johnson. I've been down here for 40 years, and it breaks my heart that the school's closing. My kids are older now, of course, and I literally stood in this room 57 years ago. So it's sad to see. I'm in the building trades, so I expect progress, but I can read from some of the neighbors that it's not the progress we want. In the immediate future, Jamie, my property abuts the playground. The YMCA, I call it the After Zoo program. The Johnson School teachers have a way of keeping these kids under control. Not the after-school program. I don't know how you can open a child daycare center with 2 18-year-old kids watching 40 kids in that playground. And believe me, it's nothing you ever heard before. I grew up I've lived here all my life. There's a different tone in the kids after 3 o'clock, all right? Yeah, it's funny now, but at 6 o'clock before, when the kids are still down there and they're screaming at the top of their lungs, climbing on the new trampoline they installed down there because they ripped the first one. Now, I don't know who polices the YMCA, but I don't know what the town's liability is going to be with 40 kids or how many kids running around on a place that, is inaccessible as the way they claimed it was, and they didn't have $3 million to keep it open, but they turned around and sold the East School or turned it over for $100 to the Metro West Collaborative. Jamie, is that the name of the company? $100, we turned it over to them. That was a $5 million property down there. East School. We couldn't get any money for that. I would rather see this property get sold to Trask somebody that's gonna come in, put in some two-family homes or something like that and take this whole building down and build a nice park around it. I'd rather see something like that. We have housing here. We have housing that's 80 years old. Go up to Cedar Gardens. No, the town has never spent a dime up there. It's been all state money. We don't even take care of the roads but plow them. That's state money up there. Those buildings are falling apart. I don't see any senior veteran housing going in. You turned it down over here on West Central Street in Mill Street. What happened to that project? That was supposed to be senior housing, veterans housing, gone. That couldn't be here because the new law with the MBTA will open it up to family housing. If they remodel the school, that's what it'll become, family housing. We're within the half-mile limit, Jamie, aren't we? The school is within the half-mile limit. Tell me that, right?
Do you have any more questions?
No, they're just statements. And if I offended anyone on Facebook, I apologize. But tell me one more thing, Jamie. How long have you been in urban planning? That's your master's, right? Urban planning?
More questions or? Okay. So I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate everything that you're providing as feedback.
Immediate future, the YMCA. I see them climbing on the rocks down here, climbing all over the rocks. They're all over the field, running wild, with two 18-year-old kids watching them.
Thank you. There's a lot in there, a lot to unpack. I don't want to answer, or I don't want to try to answer everything that you just said, but we can certainly talk afterwards if that's okay. Okay. Thank you. Just looking at time, it is 7 o'clock. I believe we have time for maybe one or two more questions.
Hi, I'm curious about the process for the community engagement. Will there be any opportunity for residents to be involved in designing the process, or are we only become involved when the process has been designed and we can participate then?
That's an excellent question. That we'll take that feedback. Yeah, I think that's a valuable point of feedback. Thank you.
One, two. Jamie, two more questions.
Perfect.
Right here. And then if anyone hasn't had an opportunity to ask a question, there's plenty of opportunities for you to provide your feedback. So we're going to get these last two in right now. And then a few of us will stick around if you want to talk to us individually.
Ready? Can we go second?
Yeah, go ahead. Just talk right into it.
You got it. Who are you? I'm Fiona, and I think for Johnson, I think since it was a tiny community, I think we should make a bigger one somehow by like doing a community pool, and I think that will bring everyone together.
Thank you.
I appreciate all the other comments to date, and thank you very much, Matt. Yours was very inspirational, especially. I echo that. Just going through this, I feel like in part of the process, it would be interesting to identify other towns that have faced something similar. I'm sure there are many others, but one that I think of is Concord and the Umbrella Arts Center, which was previously a high school and is now an amazing space for the arts. It's still owned by the town, but leased long-term by a nonprofit. So I think there are probably other really interesting models that we can look at as we go through the process. Thanks.
So just in closing, first, thank you all for your time tonight. I appreciate all of what I heard. And I do hope to see your faces again in the coming months and years ahead as we work through this community engagement process. Sorry, I'm speaking close enough. Again, ways to provide feedback. The QR code is a great way. So if you need an envelope, if you need a flyer, grab it on your way out. It's also available on the website. The website's a great way to stay engaged. Please find out ways to connect with your select board members, with the staff that's here tonight. We're really intending this to be a truly community-informed, engaged process with multiple avenues for feedback. But thank you all for your time tonight. Be safe out there with the storms. Thank you. Oh.